So I'd like to say welcome to the inaugural University of Manchester BAS Annual Lecture. As an intellectual event, the aim of the BAS Annual Lecture is to advance the School of Social Sciences core strengths in scholarship on issues of concern to us all, namely that of social responsibility, challenging inequalities, and promoting social justice. The BAS Annual Lecture speaks to these and more cross-disciplinary topics of concern and of shared importance. And at the heart of our teaching and research in the School of Social Sciences is a shared passion to understand and address social justice issues that are relevant to everyday lives across social and cultural contexts around the world. And the BAS program within the School of Social Sciences draws in the best and brightest students and provides them with important analytical skills that allow them to think outside of the box, to ask new questions of persistent and emergent social issues, and offer critical problem-solving insights. And at the heart of the BAS program is interdisciplinarity, drawing on the strengths of each of the disciplines within the School of Social Sciences. In short, BAS would not be the impactful, cutting-edge, and prestigious program that it is without everyone and every department in the School of Social Sciences. And because of the interdisciplinary and collective work of us all in the School of Social Sciences, we are confident that all our BAS graduates will go on to do great things for the lives of people around the world. And so today we're very fortunate to have the President and Vice Chancellor of our university, Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell, with us here to talk about the pivotal role of our university and how it has an effect on the lives of people, especially across the north of England, through the university's Levelling Up agenda and the university's role in and many contributions to the city of Manchester. So as a prominent and a sort of member of our great city and a national figure, Professor Rothwell is head of the Russell Group and a member of the Local Enterprise Partnership, amongst other very influential organizations. She has a stunning academic career in neurosciences and has great insight into industry, having served on the board of a multinational, as co-chair of the Prime Minister's Council for Science and Technology, and as president of the British Science Association. She is also the first woman to lead the university as president and vice chancellor. So I'm very proud to have the opportunity to present to you and to introduce Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it over to you, Professor Rothwell.
Thank you. Nancy's better, by the way. So thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And let me first of all say apologies. You're expecting our elected mayor, Andy Burnham, who sadly can't be here. And sorry you have me for a shorter period, but as a poor second. So I want to do three things, really. Firstly, talk about the importance of social sciences, and it's great that you've got the first BAS lecture. Secondly, say a little bit about what the university's role is in the areas that are important that Katie's just highlighted: social responsibility, challenging inequalities, and promoting social justice. And then a few words about our role in the city region, because certainly Andy would have focused on that. So in terms of the value of social sciences, I'm very concerned at the moment about what seems to be a battle between science and engineering and medicine, good, humanities, not good, which you hear from some politicians, which I believe is completely misleading and false. Social sciences pervades everything, everything we do. And if I can give you one example of this, if you want to go on our website, you can see this week's Cockcroft-Rutherford lecture, given by our Professor of Public History, David Olusoga, who's a well-known TV historian. And he spoke about the new histories. But later, the same evening, I happened to come across a television programme about the history of infections, which he was presenting. And it was about the terrible times when people died from minor ailments before antibiotics, before antiseptic technique. But the message I took away from it was the stories he told about certain cities in America that managed the Spanish flu much better, and about African countries that managed Ebola. And in both cases, they did so by understanding how society would respond to messages, how they would change behaviours, and how they would implement new practices. And it was through these, rather than breakthroughs in science and technology, that they stopped both of those infections. And it's highly relevant to what we're doing today. Every aspect of breakthroughs, whether they're in history or science or medicine or engineering, has a social sciences domain to it. So I think it's incredibly important. And you as students, who I'm proud to say you came to our university, I hope will be here to embrace some of those values and also to do something beyond the academic parts of your degree, because of course your degree is really important, the academic components are really important, but I hope you leave the university, as you will do at some point, with much more than that. And that is the ability to question, to challenge, to think outside the box. And as one student described it to me, I thought really, really well, they felt that their time at university had helped them to understand how to disagree well. And when I probed a little bit more, they said, I've learned to listen more than I used to. I've learned to be respectful, even to people that I disagree with. And in some cases, some of those people have changed my mind. And I think that's a really important component of your degree. So let me say a few words about the university's role. It's 10 years ago since we decided that social responsibility should be one of our 3 core goals, alongside research and innovation and teaching, learning and students. And we have a vice presidents for each, and they each have equal standing. And some people ask me, why did we decide to do that? And there's lots of reasons, but one of the reasons I think that's important is, for me personally at least, I was asked to give a presentation on what is the purpose of your university, a university like ours. And after much reflection, I came to the same conclusion as the writer of a book, Stefan Collini, who asked that question, what are universities for? And it was for public benefit. And that public benefit might be through our research and our discoveries and their application, through our work with business, through our contribution to the local economy, through our students, our graduates, but it was also much wider than that. It was beyond the academic activities, and hence that's been an important goal for us for a significant period of time. It was fantastic to see our activities recognised when we came top in the world of over 1,200 universities in a relatively new league table of social impact, how we align with the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which was fantastic. But there's still an awful lot more to do. There's still a great deal more we can do to change the world, to change our environment, to change Greater Manchester. We've signed up to a lot of things that are going to be tough. Carbon neutrality by 2038, alongside the goals of Greater Manchester, well ahead of most countries. We're pioneering our Stellify Award to enable every student to make a difference. We recognise, reward and celebrate volunteering, and you as students play an incredibly important role in that. And of course, there are many other of our activities that we contribute to, and I hope that you will contribute to as well. So let me say a little bit about our regional contribution. So at the beginning of last year, we did, after a long consultation with over 4,500 staff, students, alumni, even some school children, we published our something called Our Future, which is our future strategy. What it reiterated was our 3 core goals: research and discovery, teaching, learning and students, and social responsibility. But other themes came out of that, which was global influence. We are an international university, very proud to have many international students, many international partnerships, much international reach. In addition, innovation, that is taking our ideas through to benefit. That might be through commercial means or through social enterprise, and also civic engagement. One of the things that came through very strongly from that consultation was the importance of what a new word that came through, which was Manchesterness. Nobody could quite put their finger on what it meant, but it was something about our city region that was important. A city region that has always been pioneering as the home of the suffragette movement and the trade union movement and the Chartists, the first public newspaper and many other things. And they felt that while we were clearly a global institution, it was also important that we make a significant contribution to our city region. And so just to say a few of the things that we do this through. Obviously, I am heavily involved in the governance of the region. I'm a member of the Local Enterprise Partnership, which combines business leaders, regional government. I have many, many meetings with Greater Manchester Combined Authority, the oldest combined authority in the country, and with Manchester City Council. We do a great deal of work with local schools. Some of you may volunteer in local schools. Many of our students do, or helping, for example, to teach children after hours who are falling behind in maths or for whom English is not the first language. We welcome many of the citizens of Greater Manchester into the university, and we aim to do more of that. They come in particularly through the museum and the art gallery, through the John Rylands Library and John Broadbank Discovery Centre. So we recently commissioned a survey along with the other Greater Manchester universities of the people of Manchester. It was well over 1,000 just participants, and we asked what they thought of their universities, of which there are 5. And interestingly, well over 70% thought they added huge value. But one of the things they said was that they don't feel they have enough engagement with their universities. And so that's something we want to do a great deal more of. And something I would urge you to do, put on public events to invite in our neighbours to come and see what we're doing. Where we've been doing that, it's been hugely rewarding. Now, I mentioned the 5 universities. One of the better outcomes of COVID, and of course it's been a horrible year for all of us, and hopefully seeing something doing better, is that the Vice-Chancellors of the 5 universities, and that's the University of Manchester, Manchester Metropolitan University, the Royal Northern College of Music, and the Universities of Bolton and Salford, the 5 Vice-Chancellors have met every week at 6 o'clock on a Monday. It started with talking through how we're managing the pandemic, the challenges we're facing, how we're dealing with them, and we've continued through that to consider how we can work together. And one of the things we've announced is that together we will create a civic university agreement. It was suggested some time ago that universities should create agreements with their regional government. And we were asked individually to do it. And we decided we didn't want to do it individually. We wanted to do it together. And that is now being developed around issues such as inequalities, living wage, commitment to the environment. The other thing that we've been doing is working with the 9 further education colleges, because while Manchester is in many ways a thriving city, during the Industrial Revolution, of course, it was one of the wealthiest cities in the country and then went into decline. It's doing very much better now, but there are still huge areas of disadvantage and inequality. And you will have heard, of course, of the levelling up agenda across the UK. We also need a levelling up agenda within our region. So we're trying to work with the 9 further education colleges to develop a broader base of skills, not just for graduates, but for students who wish to study perhaps later in life or who don't wish to go on to do a degree, but want to train in an area where they know they will get employment. And actually, there is a lot of employment. The other area where we're doing a lot of work around inequalities is in health. Our Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health did a huge amount during the COVID pandemic at its peak, with many of our staff and students working frontline. They're now starting to rethink their agenda, rather than being simply around discovering new interventions that will treat diseases, more about prevention of disease and about inequality in disease. Because we know that if you live in an affluent part of Manchester, you will have 10 years of extra active life compared to somebody who is in a disadvantaged part of Manchester. Now, you might think this is about medical breakthroughs. Actually, most of it isn't. It's about society. It's about behaviours. We all know of many people who undertake behaviours that they know are poor for their health. It's not as easy as just telling them stop smoking, drink less, exercise more, lose weight, etc. And yet that is a critical factor in the future. And however much money we spend on our health service, we'll never be able to cure diseases until we can change the agenda to improve prevention and early detection. Another big area is our Global Development Institute. You may know that we have 5 research beacons across the university. One of them is global inequalities, and they do a great deal in Manchester and well beyond and across the world. And they do a huge amount to look at the levelling up agenda internationally as well as nationally. So the other thing that I want to mention before coming back to you as students is some of the activities we do and how you might participate. We have an award-winning school governors program with over 1,000 of our staff and alumni, and you might want to join when you graduate. We're on the board of governors of schools, many of them in very disadvantaged areas, and they're networked to support those schools, because we realise that while many of our staff are on the board of governors of schools, they're often the more affluent schools. And they are, obviously, we want to get to those schools which don't have school governors that can link us up. Another example will be the Works, which has now got 5,000 long-term unemployed people back into work, many of them in the university, and partly for practical reasons, because we realised that we were going through recruitment agencies and recruiting people from far afield, and there were those right on our doorstep who, for reasons of disengagement or lacking skills, were simply not getting jobs right next to where they lived. So we support them in getting those jobs. These are just a few examples of the many things that we do, and many more things that we're aiming to do. But let me come back to the most important part of this lecture, which is about you as students. Obviously, as part of your studies, you will be looking at the key themes of social responsibility, of challenging inequalities and promoting social justice. That's at the heart of social sciences, and it should be very much part of what you do. But you, in the end, can do a great deal more, either through your time with us, as volunteering, for example, or participating in other activities, and also as our alumni. We estimate we have 500,000 alumni at the university spread around the world, and many of them participate in activities led by us. And a great example I was just hearing about is the donations that we've received, partly for student support during COVID, but another one which is for Black lawyers, recognising there are so few Black students study law. And Lem Sese, our Chancellor, who I was also just chatting to this morning, he is very keen to promote that and to promote diversity well beyond that. But just as examples, more than 3,000 of our students involved in healthcare programmes have contributed to COVID. And we've also developed something called Health Innovation Manchester to try to improve the health of the 3 million citizens. And many of our students also participate in activities supporting those who've been disadvantaged by COVID. Then, of course, the other area which we hope you might contribute to is something that is so important to Manchester, which is cultural impact. Culture and creativity, I think, is not just the domain of artists, musicians and poets. I think it spans all of us, but it's incredibly important to this city. And it's also a great tool to which to deliver levelling up. There are brilliant dancers, actors, poets, singers in every aspect of society. And we have some amazing links with some of our communities through this. And we were leading on designating Manchester as a UNESCO City of Literature. We have a key role in the Histories Festival. And we also invite a lot of students into our library facilities and many more. So this lecture is really important. Your contribution is really important. And I'm hoping that you also will contribute while you're here at the university, but also beyond that, to the real importance of what Andy was going to talk about, which is a fair future for all. This is important for society, but there are practical reasons as well. I mean, often when politicians challenge me about levelling up, about fairness, I said, look, let's just look at it from a practical point of view. If we're not getting the best out of everybody, our country, our region will not be doing as well as it could be. So there are practical arguments as well as societal arguments. So I hope that in this future lecture series, and I've suggested a few speakers you might engage with that will be good, that you might think about your wider contribution. And I'm going to end and I'm happy to take questions because I do want to wish you the very best in your future in the university and of course well beyond that. So thank you very much. And sorry again, I'm a poor substitute for Andy. We must get him back. I'll chastise him when I see him.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful for you stepping in. You've saved the day essentially for the BAS annual lecture. This is in your inaugural BAS annual lecture. So Thank you very much. And it was fantastic to hear all of the different contributions and the different sort of activities and things that are planned and being acted upon throughout the university. We do have some questions coming in, which is great news. And we have our first question from Professor Jeanette Edwards, who's a colleague of mine. She says that it's great to hear about the Civic University Agreement. The construction work and the visible high-rise developments in the cities of Manchester and Salford over the past 2 years have been phenomenal. What concerns do you have about this particular kind of growth?
I think the concern I have is that this could potentially lock out some of our local citizens and that could make it not affordable. Some of you may have seen the fascinating series Mictopia, which was about the growth in the city and the left behind. There was a particularly interesting resident of East Manchester who, contrary to the views of some, was very proud of the growth in the city and thought it was wonderful. And of course, one could argue that that growth helps to provide an economy and support for other jobs. This is really timely for us because the university's just announced the launch of Innovation District Manchester, which is bringing an innovation district to our North Campus. And we announced our partners, which is a local Manchester firm, Bruntwood, together with a London-based, very big financial backer, Legal & General. It took us 18 months to get to that point. And part of the reason was we wanted our North Campus to be an innovation district, but we wanted it to be green. We wanted it to be accessible. We wanted it to be a place where people felt that they were welcome rather than shut out. And I think in a lot of city centres or office districts, they don't feel like welcoming places. So I think, we have to be careful that we are not shutting out the local residents and losing their communities in doing that. But there are many more jobs now in Manchester than there were 10 years ago. And there are many jobs, actually, more jobs in some areas than there are applicants for them. So I think it's a difficult balance. I support the growth of the city region, but we have to think about the wider residents.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And we have a few other questions coming in various locations, which is great. I've got sort of the Q&A box, which would be helpful if everybody could post in there, but we've got some here as well in the chat. We have a question from a student who was wondering about a system whereby students can voice their concerns and questions and have a say in how the university and education in the university is run. Is there a system that's being developed for that sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. There are several routes for that. First of all, obviously through your school, representation through your school to say, this is what we think should be done. Through the Students' Union, I meet very regularly with the executive of the Students' Union and they try to garner opinion. Through school open meetings, I come to the school open meetings, which we hold, and then I also hold separate meetings with student course reps, and then through groups that you might form. For example, the groups through the Students' Union on equality and diversity, on environmental sustainability. So I think, express your opinions through a number of different routes, but make sure that you use your voice. It is really important. And sometimes it can be quite difficult to hear those voices when there are 40,000 students. It's much more powerful if a group of you can get together and say, we've been debating this and actually we've got this suggestion. And I would urge you, if you can, don't do what universities are accused of, just getting a group of people who all think the same. Bring in a few people who think differently, who will challenge you, who will make you think, maybe that's not quite so easy. So a diverse group is really important.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nancy. I have a question here from Professor Jackie Carter, who's a colleague of mine.
Hi, Jackie. I know Jackie very well.
She does a huge amount of work in helping sort of students from less advantaged backgrounds get access to careers into university. She's just amazing. So her question is, she says, and I quote, Manchester is the place where people do things. Don't just talk about what you're doing, do it. That is the Manchester habit, which is a quote from Judge Perry. She asks, what do you think our students can just get on and do upon graduating, and how might they develop their personal resilience in these difficult and challenging times? Excellent question, Jackie.
Yeah, you should do what I never did. I made the huge mistake of thinking I've got to get my degree, and apart from that, I'll have fun, which was great. But I didn't grab all the opportunities that were around, either as a student or immediately on graduating. Now, when I look at some of them who have, started new groups, I met a student the other day who'd started a group that was helping prisoners to learn to read, and there were 10 of them. Another of our students, a nursing student, who'd started a group that was supporting teenage single mothers in Moss Side, giving them advice and so on. They put a few hours a week into it. They self-grouped, they asked for a little bit of support and they got it. Huge number of things you can do. And actually, one of the things I've come to realize is by doing that, I think it helps your resilience. When I talk to the winners of our Making a Difference Award and our Volunteer of the Year Award, one of the key features they tell me is when I see how difficult it is for some people, it's made me stand back and think, yeah, it's been difficult for me, but gosh, not as tough as them. And that has helped with their resilience, I think, when they see what some people get through and smile. I don't know how many of you know the story of our Chancellor, Lem Sesay. He is an unbelievable individual, and I would urge you to read his book. It's called My Name is Why, and that's because Lem is why in Ethiopian. He was given up for fostering by his mother just after he was born, but by mistake he was adopted by a family in Greater Manchester, and that became his family. He was the only black boy in the area. But when he got older, when he was 11, his adoptive family had their own children. They didn't want him anymore, so they put him into care, and he spent the rest of the time until he was 18 going from various care homes. And yet he's turned out as a remarkable, happy, balanced individual. And I said, what got you through that? He said, my poetry. And I would urge you to read his book. It's quite an eye-opener, actually. It's not a book to make you feel pitying, though. It's a book to make you in awe of somebody who got through all of that and is now a world-renowned poet.
It sounds like a great book, and I look forward to reading that. Thanks for sharing that. I have another question from someone called Riley on the Zoom. And their question kind of marries into something that I wanted to ask as well, get it in there in a bit of a sneaky way. But they ask, what are some everyday ways we can address social inequality? And I think that's a big question, of course, but it's also a really interesting one because, of course, the Leveling Up agenda is absolutely about addressing inequalities, supporting jobs, business and growth, economic growth, and addressing the impacts of the pandemic on public services for what are usually called left behind communities, right? And so with this important work that the university is doing and that needs to be done, how can we contribute as academics and as students to this agenda in a sustainable way? You've outlined some of the things, but I think in terms of social inequalities, you know, some of the things that you were talking about in terms of how actually the social underpins so much of the impact that is carried out amongst groups of people who need that we're working with. So how might students address social inequalities in this way?
So a lot of different ways. I would argue the most important one is through joining some of the volunteering groups and some of the groups who are taking action on various activities, whether it's supporting homeless or it's teaching in schools or I mean, one group that was really important was during the pandemic, a group of students got together and worked to support the elderly who were living alone during COVID and were frightened to go out and get their groceries, and they delivered groceries to them. Some of it's organised, and apart from contributing and being really important for our society, I have to say, from a practical point of view, it's also great to add to your CV. It really is an important thing that so many employers now are looking for. What have you done above and beyond get good academic marks? So I think that you need to think about, you know, which are the areas that fit you best. And a lot of them are done in teams. You don't need to do it alone. There are many, just go on our Making a Difference website or our Volunteer of the Year Awards. There are loads of activities. And then the Students' Union does a great deal to support volunteering. They have groups that can do, say, teaching. You know, I went to a school in Oldham, and they might have put it on because I was going, but there were more people in purple t-shirts with the University of Manchester on than there were teachers around, and they were all our students who were supporting this school in Oldham. So lots of different ways. I think you've got to decide what you want to do and how you're going to do it and how much time you want to put in, because you will all have limited time, but I think you'll find it incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. And in terms of schools and educational establishments across Manchester, we have a student here, I think it's a student, Anne-Marie Woolham, who has a question. She says, they say, as a student from Manchester, I was shocked when I started as to how the majority of students were from down south in London. Is there a way that you're going to try and encourage Manchester citizens to choose Manchester as their university?
I think that's a little bit of a feature of something I did. You know, I was from a little village in Lancashire, and all I wanted to do was go to London. So I think if you're from Manchester, you might want to go somewhere else. If you're from London, you might want to go somewhere else. But actually, we have a huge programme with local schools, Manchester Access Programme, and a lot of students volunteer to go and speak in those schools. And most of those are disadvantaged, and we have a lot of bursary schemes for students from those, and then they go back. And a lot of the students from those schools are the first in family. Interestingly, the better schools in Manchester, and I do visit some of them, Manchester Grammar and Withington Girls and so on, they tend to target London because they think they'll go somewhere different. But one thing that has changed is 10 years ago, the vast majority of our graduates left the region and went normally to the southeast, to London. Only a third remained. Now over a half remain. And I think that's not just a change of behaviour of the students. I think it's the fact that there are more good jobs available in the region. So we are now a net importer of graduates from London. But you're absolutely right. I think some of it is just students thinking, you know, I was brought up in Manchester, I don't want to go to university in Manchester. Having said that, our local MP told me the other day that her son has put us down as first choice to study engineering in Manchester, so it doesn't always apply. But I think there is a little bit of a sense in the UK of travel further away. Of course, a lot of students can't do that because they don't have the means to do it. So quite a lot of our local students, and it varies a lot between schools. Some have a lot of local students, some have fewer local students. And that's where the targeting of the Black Law students is particularly at local schools. So we do work with pretty much every school in the region, trying to encourage them and support them.
Brilliant, thank you. That's fantastic. I wonder if you could, so we have an anonymous attendee who's asking, I wonder if you could elaborate on how EDI commitments come to life through striving to be the best and world leading. What considerations come into play at this leading level? Do you follow that?
Yeah, I think I do. And it's something that's really difficult. And it's very much at the forefront of my mind, because we're just at the point of recruiting to a senior position in the university and to positions on the board of governors, and trying to get the balance between equality and diversity and the right skills is really hard. And then just this morning, I was with a group discussing nominations for major academic prizes. And one of them said, we've got a committee to nominate and we can't get any women onto it. And they asked me why. This was in science. I said, I can tell you exactly why. That's because there are relatively few women in science. And if they did all the things that were asked of them and we got half and half, they'd be doing 5 times more than the men. So it is a real challenge. I can't tell you how many times when we've been trying to recruit for a role, we've had to go out again and say, can we not find a more diverse pool of candidates? And there's a lot of research that's been done on, for example, boards of companies. And I don't know what's cause and what's effect here, but the research very clearly shows that more gender diverse boards of companies do better. Now, what I don't know is they're better companies anyway, therefore they're enlightened, so they invite more women on, or it's the women on the board that make more of a difference. But I don't think the two are in contrast. I think you can aim for world leading and aim for equality and diversity. It's just hard, and you've got to keep doing it, because some of the minority communities just don't come forward. Sometimes you have to, you know, say, why haven't you gone forward? One of the things we realized in my own school, which is biological sciences, a number of years ago, there weren't as many women getting promoted as men. And so there was a big study that looked into it, and it transpired that the women did not put themselves forward and the men did. And so what happened was there was a group that looked at both men and women, at everybody who might be eligible for promotion, to work with all of them to move forward. So sometimes you have to be more proactive. I've not been a favour of positive discrimination, because I think nobody wants to think, oh, I got that job because I'm a woman or because I'm in an ethnic minority. But I think we've just got to work harder. We've got a new head of equality and diversity coming in August, Banji, and David Alushka and Lem Sisse have said they're going to really help us with equality and diversity, because we are still largely a white organisation. Social sciences is much better mixed, but if you go into science and engineering, it's very male dominated still, as every university is. It's certain parts of the university are still quite narrow.
Thank you for that, Nancy. I've got two more questions, if that's okay. The first one is from Maggie Joan, and she asks what you think about health policies such as social prescribing and personal health budgets, and can such policies contribute to levelling up?
Yeah, I mean, these are a really important part of public health. And I see, Maggie, you say your GP has never heard of either of them. Shame on them. So this is more about what I was talking about. Huge proportion of poor health is driven by lifestyle, huge proportion. And we all know what we do that doesn't help. But it is about trying to change behavior. And there was a really interesting study that was done that showed you've got to be careful how you do it, because they took a group of people who were smokers, and half of them, they showed them horror pictures of what would happen to them if they continued to smoke, and they would die. And the other half, they went through group therapy sessions. The first half, virtually none of them gave up smoking. They more or less said, well, that's it then, tough, I'll carry on. And the group that went through the shared experience, a lot of them gave up. So, and it would save the GP's time in the end. This isn't just about, you know, being another good thing to do for society. It's also about the fact that, you know, that person who gave up smoking might not be then visiting the GP surgery every 3 weeks with all sorts of bronchial problems. So I do think, and engaging a community in it, and it's a big thing in schools now. One of the things we've got now is something called the hearing bus. And our audiologists go around schools in Manchester testing kids' hearing, because it's amazing how many students fall behind at school because they can't hear properly or they can't see properly, and it's not being diagnosed. And we've got a big study being led out of our School of Environment, Education and Development by Neil Humphreys, looking at the impact of poor health on educational attainment in children, because we think it's one of the key factors that children are falling behind, in part because their health is poor and not always dealt with. So go back to your GP and say they should learn about it.
Thank you. And if I may, I'm going to snag this last opportunity to ask a question that I would like to ask.
Yeah.
It is that basically the crowning glory of anyone's career is a spot on desert island discs. And you chose to teach yourself Swedish book as your book on the desert island. And I was just wondering, how is your Swedish coming along?
It's dreadful. Somebody bought me the book afterwards, and there are two reasons why it's dreadful. One, my lack of time. I pick up the book and then something else happens. And the other is the Swedes are not only so good at speaking English, but they love speaking English. So as soon as we try to speak Swedish, they go, oh, forget that, it's hopeless. Can we switch to English, please? It's a lot easier. So dreadful. But when I retire, that's going to be my goal. So, but one of the things I did ask for also is a set of sketching and drawing, because it's unusual that I did at A-levels maths, physics, chemistry and art, and one of the reasons I'm so passionate about humanities, and so that I have used a little bit more, but still not that much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And I just wanted to flesh that out from your desert islandists interview. But that's wonderful. And I recognize that you've done this because you're very aware and keen to make sure that the students aren't disappointed. And I'm really grateful for your time and for you stepping in at such an immediate way. You stepped right in straight away, and I'm very grateful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and apologies again from Andy.
No, I'm sure.
Okay.
I hope he is well.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.